What is cracking, everybody? It's MegapieMan here with another Jumpstart developer interview. Today I'm going to be interviewing Nieuwoudt from Taitale Entertainment, and we're going to be talking about Novus Aeterno, if I'm saying all that stuff correctly. I do apologize if I said any of that incorrectly.
It's close enough, it's close enough.
Alright.
So hey guys, I'm Nieuwoudt, and I am the lead game designer and founder of Taitale Entertainment. And today I want to show you our flagship game, Novus Aeterno, which is a seamless, persistent MMO RTS. It is effectively a galactic empire builder simulator, trading, economy, destroying everything. Everything you could ever want in a massive, endless strategy space game.
Now, when I saw this game on Kickstarter, I was very interested in it, because it just seems like I've never seen a game that tries to be as open as this is. So it's a very big and interesting project for you to be going for. And this is going to be kind of a different Jumpstart interview than you guys are used to watching. Normally, I would just interview the developer, and then I would put concept art or whatever sort of assets the developers have over the screen for the viewers to watch. But in this, Nick is actually going to walk me through what they have of the game so far. So I'm really excited to see what we've got going on here.
Okay. So on that note, let's kind of get started. Right now, you should be looking at the surface of your home planet.
Right now, I am looking at the Select a Race menu.
Okay. That's good too. So as you'll notice on the top, you have the left and right keys, which show 5 other races. At the moment, the humans are the only race that is playable. The other 4 races are still in development. So go ahead and select humans, and then select your avatar out of the images along the bottom of the screen, and then just go ahead and click continue.
Does it matter what avatar I select, or...
Yes, the guy with the beard makes your spaceships go much faster.
Nice. I will choose...
Not seriously, but... You should always go with the guy with the beard.
I'm going with the guy with the
basic rule of all sci-fi, if it's red, it goes faster, and if it has a beard, it's more powerful.
Nice, nice. So you have a red guy with a beard, you're good to go.
Yeah, red guy with a beard. Or red painted beard with racing stripes. There you go.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Alright, so I will start a username and click create.
Yes.
And then enter game?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, once you load into the game, you will be looking at the surface of your home planet. Now, at the moment, the surface of your home planet is actually all 2D, but space and all that is all 3D. But just for development efficiency, we made the surface 2D, because also we would like to be adding in ground combat and stuff like that, and that's a bit easier on a 2D map. But one of our Kickstarter stretch goals will be to make the surfaces of the planet full 3D and allow for like orbital bombardment that destroys the terrain and shapes it and stuff like that.
Now, this
but for the moment, it's just 2D.
Me to run a tutorial. Should I click yes or no to
that? Click no to that. I will be your tutorial today. Do not fear.
Fantastic.
Okay, so first thing you're going to want to do, WASD moves the camera around, or left click and drag. You will notice that pretty much all the moving of camera around is done with WASD, because as it is an MMO version of an RTS game, there's so much more that you need to be controlling. I wanted to remove camera control from the mouse, like you have in a typical RTS game. So pretty much all movements done with WASD. Now, what you're going to want to do first is on the right of your screen, the 3rd button down is Build Sector. Click on that.
Okay, right side. All right.
Okay, so now you're going to want to build a warehouse, a factory, a shipyard, and a spaceport. So first, double-click on Warehouse, and you will see a hex grid layout of the building's footprint, sorry.
Got it.
Okay, now go ahead and left-click to place the building. And you actually probably don't want to build 2 warehouses, so go ahead and click Shift, and another blueprint will show up where your mouse is, and just click again to build a second one. Shift allows you to build the same building multiple times, or to build the building you just built.
I really like that. That's nice to see.
Okay, now go back into the Build Sector menu.
All right.
And double-click on the factory. You should probably build 2 factories as well, so just click while holding down Shift, and then click again.
Okay, let me find some open ground. I really like that you can just press Shift and you don't have to go into the menu.
Yeah, you know, a lot of the things, I mean, as I come from a competitive strategy background, I grew up playing StarCraft and Red Alert, Aftermath, for the win, best game ever, aside from this game, of course. Because I grew up with that, I mean, I was so used to trying to, like, in the game design and everything, we tried to optimize everything so you could streamline production a lot, because it is an MMO, an empire building game, but the whole point is that the pacing is still pretty quick. You can build fleets quickly, you can lose fleets quickly, you can rebuild quickly, so you can sit down for 2 hours and have a really deep, intense, action-packed strategy experience, and come back the next day and continue that. But it's not like the typical MMO where it takes you a week before you can get into combat and PvP. I mean, this game, well, as you'll see, within us playing this game, you will be in PvP and having massive fleet battles.
Well, I'm interested in seeing that. Would you say that this game is as fast as a game like StarCraft 2? I don't imagine that would be. It is that fast? Wow.
No, it is much slower than StarCraft. It is, I would say, much more akin to a Total War type of game.
Unfortunately, I have not had the chance to play a Total War game.
You are missing out a lot, especially on the older ones. But okay, so well, you'll see what the pacing's like. The empire building element is a bit slower, so building up your planet and all that takes a bit more time, but building units and stuff like that is quite quick. Or similar to kind of a Company of Heroes speed, if you played that, or Dawn of War.
I've played
so
Dawn
not
of War.
as micro-intensive as StarCraft, not at all.
All right.
Okay, so now, once you built the factories, you're going to want to build one spaceport and one shipyard.
Spaceport? These buildings are huge.
Yes, so they're not actually buildings, they're entire sectors. So it's actually an entire city dedicated just to the production of components and stuff.
Ah, I can see that. Around the big building, there's all these smaller buildings down on the ground.
So that's actually, like, that would be the size of, like, just huge. I mean, that would be the size of, I don't know, what's a massive city? Like New York or London, that's the size of just one of these sectors.
Wow. So you wanted me to build a spaceport, and what was the other one, a shipyard?
Shipyard.
All right, we'll do.
Okay, so now once you have both those built. Now, one thing that's actually important to note, you notice there's a number at the top of your screen. It should be like 6 out of 100 or something.
Right now it's 12 out of 100.
12 out of 100. Okay, that is the number of the left side is how many sectors you have. Right side is how many sectors your population on the planet can support. Now, as this is a development server, we maxed out the population on a planet, so that's why you can build so many buildings just willy-nilly. On the live server, you have to be slowly growing your population to be able to support more buildings on the planet. Population in this game effectively acts like XP would in World of Warcraft. It levels you up, gets you more abilities, more skills. Like, that's the progression in the game, is your population. But as you have multiple planets, you have multiple progressions going at the same time.
Now, will some planets only be able to have a certain amount of population? Like, if you have a small planet, is it capped? Okay.
Yes, but not only that, it's also dependent on your race. For example, the population cap on for humans on a Terran planet is much higher than, say, one of our alien races, the Azendi. Their population cap on an ice planet is very, very high, whereas a human population cap on an ice planet is lower. Made sense? Like, it depends on what the race's more natural habitat is. Just to be able to support a population on an ice planet means a lot more infrastructure. You need biodomes, you need all these heating, you need greenhouses to try and make food for them. It takes a lot more infrastructure to support the same number of population.
Right. That's a really cool idea. So not only do you have to pay attention to population, but you also have to constantly be going out try to find other planets. And not just any planet, like if you find an ice planet or if you find, I guess, maybe a magma planet.
They have different resource values. For example, a magma planet has a lot of common production resources. So just like basic production materials like iron, cobalt, stuff that you would use a lot. So mining a magma-esque planet or an early development planet is very, very valuable. But don't expect to be able to support a huge population there. Which means you'll probably have mines there, but then they need transport ships to remove the ore from that planet and send it to another planet for production, because you won't have room on the magma planet to also have all your production.
That's pretty cool. I really like the scale of this game. I haven't really played a game. I'm not big into MMOs, but I haven't really seen a game that is this big of scale.
I mean, personally, I'm actually not that into MMOs typically, but this is. I don't like to look at this as an MMO strategy game. It is a real-time strategy game that is allowed to be played with with this many players and on such a large map. I mean, it's a really, really big strategy game. It's not a strategy-styled MMO, if that made sense.
That makes sense.
Okay, so now go ahead and click on your shipyard, which is the one with the like dock floating in the air.
All right.
Above it. Double-click on that, and your shipyard interface will open up. At the top of that, you have a button called Ship Designer. Click on the Ship Designer button.
Okay.
Now, in this game, creating units in Novus Aeterno is unlike all other RTSs where you actually, not all of them, but most of them, where here you actually design your units. Now, how it works is you scroll down this list here that you have on the right of the interface, and these are your different hull types. Now, a hull type can be turned into anything. It's just a basic block of metal. If you want a transport ship, put transport ways on it. If you want a battleship, put guns on it. If you want a scout, put fast engines on it. Like, whatever combination you want to. It's literally just the core backbone of a ship. So, and it's really, the only difference really is their HP and their size and how many things they can fit on them. So go ahead and select a ship. I would recommend probably like one of the cruisers or battleships. Make nice all-purpose ships for what we're trying to do now. Right. Not the Cruiser Mark II, though. Don't get the Cruiser Mark II. All
right. There are a lot of options here.
Yes.
I noticed that when we started this up, there was a tutorial. Is there going to be a lot to help people learn what all of this stuff does?
Now,
just throwing them
another thing, as this is the development server, you start out with a lot more of these things unlocked. When you first get into the game, you'll have just one hull. And then you'll progress very, very quickly and unlock a lot more very quickly, so you can get into space and get exploring and conquering. But it will be presented to you in a much easier fashion. Like here, there's a lot of information that's not really critical to a new player, like all the hull info on the left, which has all the minor details of the hull. That's really not important for a new player, and so that stuff will be streamlined a lot in the introduction process. Right. So go ahead and select a hull. Actually, maybe a battleship would be a nice one. Nice, cool looking ship as well.
All right, I'll make a battleship Mark 1. Do I need to double-click this?
No, just select it once and highlight it. You'll see the blueprint of it in the top left.
All right.
Now, from here, you work your way right across the top of the interface. So next, click Weapons, and start clicking and dragging weapons into your weapon slots.
Does it matter which ones I choose?
Right now, no.
All right.
And you can also scroll down. You notice that there's frontal primary weapons, left secondary weapons, left primary weapons. Each race has a primary and a secondary weapon category. For humans, primary weapons are like massive anti-capital ship cannons, which have limited fire arcs but do a lot of damage, pretty low reload speed, but they're kind of like your backbone of your firepower. They're your main DPS weapons. And then you have secondary weapons, which do less damage, have a lot shorter range, much larger fire arcs because they're turreted, and also the good thing about secondary weapons is they can shoot at enemy fighters and enemy missiles. So secondary weapons are almost like a defensive weapon. But that depends on the race. For example, one of the alien races, their primary weapons are bites. Like, they run up and bite your ship in half, or they can eat your ship and spit it out, stuff like that.
That's
so
primary.
Cool. So it depends on what the race is, what your primary and secondary weapons do. Anyway, so now that we have that, move along to engines. Now, one thing that is critical in this game is do not forget to put engines onto your ship.
I imagine that will be very, very important.
Yes, if you don't put engines on your ship literally just sits there in space. It doesn't have engines when you launch it, and it becomes just a space station. Many a time I have released ships and then like called up the server engineers like, why the hell is server not working? The server's working just fine. I say, oh, I just forgot to put engines on the ship. That's why it's not moving.
So the game, it won't actually tell you that you can't launch your ship yet. It doesn't have engines on it. You actually have to pay attention to whether it does or does not.
We will be putting on a warning message saying, are you sure you want to launch your ship without engines?
All right.
So we will be adding that. As I said, we're still in early alpha right now, so there's still a lot of stuff we're adding into the game. Okay, so, and as is a new Empire, you haven't researched any shields yet, so move along to utilities. Put on a offensive troop transport and an offensive, an FTL assembly and an offensive troop drop pod.
All right.
Under utilities, and then under bays, put an offensive troop transport.
Offensive troop transport. Okay.
Now, click the save design at the bottom and enter a design name afterwards.
We will be the awesome design.
The awesome design. Okay. Now, in reality, I hate to burst your bubble, but this is actually a horrible ship design. because we've taken a ship and put everything on it, which means it's very expensive to produce, but you don't need it to be like, okay, you have offensive troop transports, which you use to capture enemy planets, but you also have a lot of weapons, so it's also like a frontline unit, when in reality, your frontline units don't need to have troop transports on them. So as you get better in the game, you'll start understanding and seeing like where you can conserve points, like, and where you can optimize the cost and also the population cost of each one of these ships.
You kind of want to specialize the ships that you build instead of just putting everything on it. You want to specialize it for either fighting or for taking planets instead of just being an all-purpose sort of vessel.
That honestly really comes down to the playstyles. Now, I was a bit unfair in starting because it could be a great ship. It depends on your playstyle. Personally, I like having things very specialized for their specific actions. I don't like mixing and matching. But that also comes from I primarily played StarCraft as my background. So I have my ranged unit. I have my you know, my Marauder, which I always keep back from the front line. Then I have my Marines, which I go micromanaging around the enemies. I have my units that have very specific tasks. That's how I like to play the game. But you can actually play however you want. You could have your offensive troop transport ships be your most heavily armored ship and like break into the enemy line and then just start dropping troops on their planet. Like just like completely ignore the fact that they have a fleet there, just start dropping troops, and being so heavily armored you can take it. So that's really up to your playstyle. Anyway, now that we have this, click on the top button on the right, and that is a back button. It'll take you back to the normal shipyard interface.
All right.
And then click on the drop-down menu at the top of the interface, and you'll want to select the ship you just built.
All right. We have selected. Awesome.
Yes, and then at the bottom left, bottom right, you have a build button, and you can spam the build button as many times as you want. So the one thing that's about this is that when you build different factories and shipyards and stuff on a planet, they don't produce things faster. In reality, what they do is allow for more production at one time. So because that way it's easier to micromanage producing 20 ships at once and then going and doing a lot of other things than coming back every 2 minutes to produce another 2 ships. Right. Even if it is faster, it's adding needless complication. And what we're really trying to do is that it is a massive, huge strategy game, but we want to actually streamline it as much as possible so the players don't need to be worrying about needless things. They would be focusing on expanding their empire and combat and that stuff.
That makes sense.
Now, if you go into your factory, you should notice that you should notice a whole bunch of components which are being produced.
All right, I believe I've clicked on the factory under construction.
Yes.
Whole list of things.
So these are your weapons, your engines, your shields. They actually need to be produced separately. Now, once they're completed and being produced, if you click on your warehouse, you can also, on this interface, on the left of the interface, there's a whole bunch of names, warehouse, factory, stuff like that, to quick navigate through your planet. So if you go into your warehouse, you should see, first of all of your resources that you have, because those also take up space in the warehouse. But then you'll also see, probably near the bottom of that, your components that you were just building.
Right, I've got a whole bunch of parts and stuff here.
Exactly.
Total storage and all that.
Yeah. Now, the reason we designed it like this is so that, alright, so you have a your population cap, your CP for military units, which is actually a population cap for your units, not planets. You can capture as many planets you want, build as much as you want, but you can only ever have so many military units in the game at one time. And this is just to balance out new players versus old players. So a new player can still build up an equal force to a more veteran player and can still compete on a galactic scale. Right. So you're not always like being lower level doesn't mean you're worse in any way. Just means you don't have as many options for stuff.
That was one of the things I wanted to make sure to ask you, because your game is a MMO game. Everybody's playing at the exact same time. And since, from what I read on your Kickstarter page, you're talking about people being able to build huge, spanning empires. I was wondering how you would make it so that somebody who just started out would be able to even compete with someone who's got 5 or so planets filled to the brim with manufacturing and a whole fleet and nonsense.
Well, you'll notice that we designed a lot of elements, all the elements around the game, to support that type of gameplay, and also support type of gameplay where you don't actually even need a planet to be a successful, like you don't need a big empire to be a successful player. Depends on how you want to play. because you don't have to even play militaristically in this game at all. So one of the main elements for that is the fact that you have this population cap of military units. So no matter what, you always are balanced with your play. Now, as you go researching better weapons and stuff like that, now I'll get into research in a moment, because our research doesn't use tech trees or anything like that. But as you go researching better weapons, better ships, and stuff like that, you can produce much stronger, more powerful units, but they cost more CP, more command points, which is our version of population cap.
Right.
So no matter what, you're always actually on a fairly balanced scale against the other players. Now, this also adds in another element, which is the larger your empire gets, the harder it is to defend. So it adds a very nice difficulty curve. Like, defending one planet with the given resources for units is very easy. But defending an empire of like 2 or 3 solar systems is very difficult. So it requires a much better player to also think much more diplomatically, because you can't hold an empire that big against 10 enemies, for example.
Right.
Now, the other reason for the population cap is so that we could reduce the production speed of units. So this way, you can rebuild fleets really quickly, because we don't have to worry about you just building 1 billion ships. Because that's it. We want also a fast-paced, action-feeling game. So, one sec. So now, if you go into your spaceport, you should find you should find in your spaceport your completed ships, or fairly soon at least.
Yes, they are finished.
Okay. So what the spaceport does, the spaceport is where you can dock your ships, where you can repair your ships, where you can reload your ships, where you can, not reload, where you can resupply your ships, which is important. Ammunition in this game is actually a supply on your ships that you must produce in your factories. And ships can actually run out of ammunition.
Is there a way to, such as if you have them in a fleet and they're far away from your planet, is there a way to send supplies to them to resupply, or do they always have to come back to a planet?
Nope.
Okay.
You can resupply them far away, but you will need to spend money on building ships, like in-game currency, on building specific resource transport ships. And that's where also a lot of the tactics stand for longer-term gameplay. The further you push into an enemy territory, the easier it is for him to cut off your supply lines.
I really like that idea. It really has to make you think about strategy and supply lines and making sure that you can always have contact with your different units.
Now, this, let me see. I just built a couple ships on my own. Okay, so now in your shipyard, and this is also in your shipyard where you will add officers onto your ships and stuff, which is one of my favorite stretch goal on Kickstarter, which I'm really excited about, is officers. And how officers work is instead of a unit gaining experience like typical, like most strategy games, the officers on the ship itself will gain experience. Now, what that means is that you can give them skills, unlock new abilities, level them up, and move them between ships. So after you've been playing for a month or so, what would end up is you would have your most amazing dreadnoughts that have like fantastic officers, and each one of those officers will have a war record with you, because they would have started as some random recruit for some small little cruiser and then just been promoted up and up through the ranks. They would have commanded 5 or 6 ships by now, and they would have actually kind of earned their weight in your empire.
So it's not the ships themselves that get better, it's the crew that manages them that gets better.
It's the officers that manage them. Not the crew itself, but the actual officers. And the larger the ship, the larger the bridge, the more officers you have to run the ship.
If I'm fighting against a person and he has a ship that's run by a lot of high-level officers, is there a way for me to know what level his officers are so I have an idea of how powerful his ship is? Because from what you're saying, it seems like even if you have 2 ships that are exactly the same, they won't necessarily act exactly the same because it depends upon the level and experience of the people who are operating them.
Yes. You will be able to see, but that falls more into the information category of the game, where like the espionage element. To do that, you will need very advanced scanners, or more than likely, you will need to be able to have spies on those ships. Now, to get spies on those ships means you need to drop spies on his planet and have them start trying to integrate into the society and end up on those different ships. So knowing what rank officers he has on his ships will be a very, very high level thing. So only very, very late game players will be able to figure that out.
Okay.
But now there's another important thing is that when a ship dies, so your officers will try and escape the ship, but some of them may die, and that will lead into some of the utilities you can put onto your ships are, for example, advanced escape pods, stuff like that, which will increase the chances of their survival.
That's pretty cool. I really like that idea. So even if you lose a vessel, you may not lose a high-level ranked officer that you can just go and save him and put him on another ship and get right back in the action.
Exactly. And now this is also, this comes into another important point where you have to, all these utilities and components you put on your ships cost population cap, cost CP. So you have to really think, I mean, it's not really worth it to put on all your ships, but your very best ships that have your best officers you want to. Whereas if your corvette dies, you really don't care if those officers die.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be a true leader and make these hard, heartless decisions of who you try and protect and who you don't. Now, let's actually launch your ships into space and get like flying around and stuff. You're looking at the planet way too much. There's a space jam. You're spending way too much time on a planet. Now, in your shipyard, in your spaceport, you can select your ships that you have there. If you highlight one of them, you click the launch button in the bottom right, and that will launch the ship into space. Right next to the launch button, there's a little circular button that's almost like rewind or something. Mm-hmm. You can click that, and that is auto launch. So it'll automatically launch every ship the moment it enters into the spaceport, into space. So this is good if it's like a production planet and you're building a lot of ships, so you don't have to go in every time and launch them individually.
Well, that's nice. I really like that, so you don't have to constantly go back to the same planet.
No. The one thing to remember, though, is that if you're trying to land ships onto the planet to repair them or resupply them, mm-hmm. they will keep on auto-launching back into space. So that's one thing you may want to keep an eye on. If you land a ship, if you dock a ship on a planet and it launches right back into space, that's why. Mm. Okay, so now, once you've launched it into space, go ahead and click Escape, and that will jump you into space.
Should I launch all of them into space?
Yeah, launch all of them into space, and tick the auto-launch button.
Alright. I fired one into space, but I wasn't sure if I should put them all. Alright, they are all in space now.
Okay. So now, press Escape, and you will be looking at your planet, your home planet.
Ooh, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Now, once again, WASD moves the camera around the screen. Mouse wheel zoom in and out. Hold down mouse wheel and move your mouse around, and it will look around space.
Oh, that's nice. I like that you can actually see your ships in space and above the planets. It's really cool. Now, all of these other planets that I see, these are all planets that I can actually go to and colonize.
Yep.
So yeah. There's nothing at the moment that I see that if I was just playing the game that I couldn't go to.
The only thing that you can't colonize is notice that there's some other planets that have a bluish glow around them like yours.
I see one with a K on it.
That was just an art director's joke. He painted a big ass K on the planet. It was supposed to be a joke referring to like the Kickstarter K, but he actually made the logo incorrectly, so it's like a black, like the background's round, which actually makes it look like the Customizable antivirus. So it's actually it's the Customizable antivirus planet instead of the Kickstarter planet.
Nice.
But okay, there's some planets you'll see, like you see how your planet has a bit of a bluish glow around it? Mm-hmm. That is a fortress shield, which means no one can capture your home planet. They can also not shoot at the ships that are inside of your home planet. Now, you'll notice a couple other home planets that will probably be in your solar system.
Right.
And these are other players' starting planets that they can't capture. Now, I'll go into a bit about why we added in home planets and stuff like that in a moment. First, then, let's get you moving your units a little bit.
Okay.
You can drag and select, just like a normal RTS. Drag and select, hold down left mouse button, right-click to give a move order. You'll also notice a blue hologram of the ship show up of where it's going to go and the position it's going to be facing. Mm-hmm. To make you can also left-click, right-click, and drag to tell them to go somewhere and face a specific direction.
Do you guys have hotkeys in as of yet, or is that something you're still working on?
We're still adding in all the hotkeys. You can do control groups, though, if that's what you mean.
All right, that's nice. That's always a nice thing to see.
Yeah, you can do control. We will be adding in a lot of hotkeys. It's just at the moment we haven't added them in yet.
All right.
The one thing is Control 1, the hotkey for Control Group 1 does not work because we were reserving 1 for capital ships. So you can make control groups for 2 and up, though. So another thing to notice is when you move a ship and tell it to face a direction, you'll notice that it will accelerate towards the location. Once it's reached cruising speed, though, it will start drifting into the final direction you want it to be facing. So you can actually have a unit accelerate forwards, then it will rotate to the left and drift sideways to its final destination. As it is space, we can play a lot more around with these kind of movement physics.
That's pretty cool.
Also, you can tell ships will always move in the fastest manner to the direction you want. So if you tell a ship to move backwards and face forwards, the fastest thing to do is just to reverse to that location. And if you zoom in on the ship, you'll notice like its small frontal like braking thrusters firing to shoot it backwards.
I like the little details on them. That's really nice to see that they have those sort of details, so they kind of actually make sense realistically.
Yeah, and also like, if you zoom in on a ship and tell it to rotate by selecting it and then left-clicking and dragging on the ship and telling it to face another direction, you'll notice like the little engines firing to rotate it and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I love the little details. That's always nice to see.
All right, so now you've seen on the planet, you've seen in space. Now time to see stuff on the solar system scale. Press spacebar, and this will take you to the tactical mode. Now you can zoom out with mouse wheel. You can zoom out quite a ways, and you will see a lot of solar systems around you as well. You can move around with WASD.
Game is huge.
We haven't even gotten started. So
Wow.
you can get an idea of scale. A solar system, like the diameter within the rings, is about the size of 9 8v8 StarCraft maps. Okay.
That's
so
insane.
A solar system is massive. Now, all the space in between solar system is part of the map as well. It's not like Sins of a Solar Empire where you jump from planet to planet or solar system to solar system. You can move just straight to one solar system from another one. It'll take a while though. Now, another thing is, if you'll hold down W in any ASD in whatever direction, you'll notice you'll just keep on going and it'll just keep on spawning more and more and more solar systems. A galaxy, this galaxy, as it's our development galaxy, it's really small. It only has like 3,000 solar systems.
Oh, only.
Which, yeah, only 3,000. Which means, so you get an idea of scale. Like, you've seen how fast the units move, more or less.
Yeah.
At that speed, it will take the units about 2 months to get from one end of the map to the other.
No ludicrous speed yet?
There is ludicrous speed.
Oh, really?
Now, yes. Okay. Now, first of all, for normal ludicrous, what was the speed under ludicrous speed? Like insanely fast or something?
Something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, okay. So for insanely fast speed, you select the units and press T, and you'll notice little like arrows pop up above them. This is insanely fast speed. You'll notice that the units move significantly faster.
I'm not... Okay, do I need to... Okay, let's select the... Alright, and then press T. I'm not seeing it happening. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here.
You should see... No?
Do I still need to be in solar system mode, or do I need to go back?
Oh, no. Zoom back into the game, sorry. To where wherever your mouse is in the solar system mode is where your camera exits when you return to, like, normal combat mode. So just put your mouse over your units and press spacebar, and you'll end up right over your units. Right. And then here, select your units. They may already be in travel speed. Do they have little arrows popping up above them?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so now if you'll try and move them now, you'll notice they move significantly faster than before. Now, while in travel speed, the units, they cannot shoot and you have no shields. But it's better just for maneuvering around and exploring and stuff like that. Now, the third mode of travel is ludicrous speed. Now, go into the galactic mode again, the solar system mode, the tactical mode.
All right.
And select your ships.
Okay.
And then in the bottom right of your screen, there is a little circular button with an arrow in it that says FTL.
All right.
Press that, and your cursor should change.
It does.
And now, click somewhere.
All right, let's just click into the void of outer space. And they're there.
Yes, that is ludicrous speed.
That's pretty cool.
So right now we're still polishing up how FTL works. At the moment, when ships exit FTL, they end up right on top of each other. What we're actually doing to help balance it out is that when you FTL, the further away you go, the more spread out your formation becomes. And if you FTL to somewhere where you've never been before, so you've never seen the topography of the solar system in that area, there is a high chance some of your units may end up inside of planets and suns and stuff.
Oh, well,
So
that
you must
would
be very careful.
That would not be fun. Right now,
That would not be fun.
all my guys are piled inside of each other, which is
Yes.
got to make for some awkward conversation.
It does make off conversation. Now that is just as I said, as we're still adding in the dispersion when they exit. The reason for this is to make FTL more of better for exploration and for defensive maneuvers, not good for offensive maneuvers. So for example, to defend your own planet, you can FTL back to your own planet. You know the topography of your own solar system, so you'll never end up inside of a planet. And it's good for exploring because you can cover a lot of space. You send out 20 ships and they'll exit FTL at the other end of the galaxy, spread across 5 solar systems. But it's not good offensively, because if you try and FTL into my home territory, first of all, your fleet will end up very spread out and out of formation, and I'll teach you in a moment how important formations are. But also, you may end up with some of your most important ships, or ships that are really key to your strategy inside of planets. So it comes in very handy to not FTL in combat and not risk it. Now you can do it. It's like quick and dirty solution. You can do it, but it can be dangerous. Now, let us find each other. So now zoom out a little bit, and in the solar system view mode, it will say solar system and then a number and a coordinate when you hover your mouse over your solar system.
All right. Right now, I am in Solar System 325. The coordinates are -9, -9.
Okay, so 325, you said. I found you. Now, you should notice that you have your planet, which will have a blue ring around it. When you zoom in a little bit, and then enemy homeworlds and enemy or unknown planets have orange rings around them.
Right.
Now, where is your planet? Like, what is your planet? If you zoom in a little bit... Oh, I found it.
My planet is Ice 15.
Yes. So, Ice is the type of planet. Right now, there's a bug where human races can still spawn in ice planets. A human homeworld will always be a Terran planet, though.
Is that you right here, this 15, I see?
Yes, that is me.
Can I click on you, maybe?
Yeah, enter exit tactical mode and go into just normal...
Yeah, there you are.
These are my fleet of scouts.
Nice.
Now,
that is a much bigger fleet than what I got.
Notice that my units, the icon above them is gray. That's because I'm not hostile to you. Like, we just encountered each other. So our units won't automatically shoot each other or anything. Now, if you left-click or right-click on one of my units, you will notice that a little menu will pop up, say set as friendly, set as hostile, stuff like that. Now, the way that most of the diplomacy works in the game is that we don't enforce any of the decisions that players make. So, for example, if you set me as friendly, all you're really doing is telling your own fleets not to shoot me. I can still shoot you. In which case, your setting will automatically go from friendly to hostile, obviously.
Kind of like in Civilization.
Kind of like Civilization, true. Now, the other step, which is an important thing, is that an alliance is the only agreement between players that the game enforces. So no matter what, you can never attack someone in your alliance. Now, there's a second piece to this, is that an alliance is a max of 15 players. Now, this really is important when you add in the consideration of, look at what happens in other persistent games where you can capture territory in a dynamic environment and you have alliances. A good example is Eve. Okay, you have an open area of space where alliances can capture territory. What ends up happening is you will have a huge alliance that owns everything. And as you enter the game, your decisions are kind of join that alliance and just be like a cog in a huge operation, or try and go at your own and die. Pretty much the opposite you get if you want to play in that style of game. And even in browser-based games and stuff like Tribal Wars, the same things happen over and over again. Now, not to avoid this, but to add in a way to combat it. Because in most other games, there's no way to fight against an alliance like that. What we've done here is, an alliance is a max of 15 people, and a coalition is as many alliances as you want. But there is nothing stopping two alliances in the coalition from starting to shoot at each other and declaring war on each other.
So
Now,
a coalition is more of just a verbal group together, such as if you if you have a YouTube channel, or if you have some sort of group of people and you want to get everybody who are your friends together or who are in your group. Like if you have a large YouTube channel and you have a bunch of subscribers, if you want them to get together to be in your coalition, they can do that, but they can still fight against each other if they decide to.
Yeah. The important part is, okay, most players will try and create coalitions that are incredibly strong and that stick together and fight together and always protect each other. But the reason for this is because there's the other end. The weakness of a large coalition like that is that you can have players that dedicate their empire to espionage and trickery. So one of the abilities that people who really focus more on the information end of the game can do is they can cloak their ships as another player's ship. So now imagine this massive coalition of people who play together and know each other, but as I said, they're all your YouTube subscribers. Now, all of a sudden, one of the alliances in that coalition gets attacked by a couple of ships that appear to be from another alliance in the coalition. These people aren't best friends. They don't really know each other that well, and war could break out. And now you, as the leader of this coalition, have to somehow keep it all in check and keep everyone organized. There's the larger and the less personal a coalition gets, the easier it is to break it down completely into total chaos and civil war.
Now, does all of that diplomacy happen outside of the game, or does it only happen in, say, a chat box or a chat system, or is there some sort of thing like you can click on a guy and you can send him a document or some sort of notification asking him to stop attacking other alliances?
You can send declarations or non-aggression pacts. You can do all that stuff in the game, but stuff like that is not forced to him. So he'd get a message like that you were pleading for a non-aggression pact. You can accept or decline it, but you can accept it and then go back and attack him again if you want to. But stuff like this, you can also publicly denounce other players and make declarations of friendship towards them. So if someone accepts a non-aggression pact and then attacks war right afterwards, we'll give you an option to publicly denounce this player for this action. So now wherever that player goes and whatever he does on his record is marked that he has been publicly denounced for not following the rules of the agreement that he agreed to.
So will any other player, if they click on him or if they look at his account, will they be able to see that other people have denounced him?
If they get to know him. That's another element there. You don't automatically know a player. You have to actually be introduced to them. You can tell the difference between players you don't know based on that they all have different frequency signals for like how they communicate and how their empires run. But like, for example, you don't know another empire's name unless you have introduced yourself to them, or unless they have gotten spies onto your planet or captured one of your planets or something like that.
That's interesting.
So this also adds into the whole point of being able to break down larger coalitions, because the larger a coalition gets, the less personal it is, and the easier it is to try and start to play players against each other.
Right.
Now, why don't you build a couple more ships, and we can actually get to a little bit of combat and show you how that works.
All right. All I need you to do is tell me how to get back to my planet view.
Oh, double-click on your planet. Really simple.
All right. Let's build up a couple more ships.
Also, while you're in space, the second button down on your right is your Empire Management. Actually, go ahead, click Escape and exit your planet for a second, and I'll show you the Empire Management.
All right.
Okay, second button down on the right, Empire Management. This shows you all of your planets that you own and in each system and everything like that. And it also shows their research, resources, and population, all that stuff.
Now, is this different because we're in the dev build? So if we were actually in the full version of the game, these numbers wouldn't be as high as they are now?
Yeah, as is the dev build. We give you so much resources, it's not even funny. Like, notice that you were just building ships and planets, like, you haven't even paid attention to your resources. You should probably build a mine, though, because you can still run out of these resources.
All right.
Now, research is something that, unfortunately, right now, we just let in about 100 temporary alpha accounts from our last live stream. And so right now, there's been a lot of people on the server, and they have found a very, very large bug with the research system. So for the moment, we've deactivated research while we're fixing that bug, but I can explain to you a little bit how it works. How research works is that you have a theory, a hypothesis, sorry. Your people can generate hypotheses. your population, an engineer on a ship in combat can a specific way that you killed another ship, he gets an idea. And now you can research these hypotheses by selecting a research facility and selecting hypotheses. Now, a hypothesis is nothing more than, I wonder what happens if. Now, you start researching that hypothesis, and you will gain a breakthrough from that. You may gain a breakthrough. You may gain absolutely. Someone tried to light water on fire. Nothing happened. Or they try and light water on fire. They realize that water puts out fire. Now, this is actually a great example. The breakthrough of that would be they've discovered something that can put out fire very effectively. This may lead to some kind of defensive mechanism to help reduce critical damage on ships. So reduce fire damage on ships. It may. Okay. Now, with this breakthrough, you still don't know exactly what it's going to do, but you have an idea. You know, it's defensive for ships, reduce critical damage, possibly. Now, you research that breakthrough, and it will come back with a prototype component. And at that point in time, you know exactly what it's going to do. It'll reduce all fire damage on ships by 5%. And at that point in time, you can decide, do I want to research the prototype or not? And at all this point in time, you can stop the research process at any point and go researching another hypothesis. But the reason for this is you generate hypotheses more or less at random. So every single player has different technology than every other player in the game. This also came in for what happens when we brought up when we were discussing earlier about players playing and starting at different times.
Right.
This way, otherwise, a really veteran player would have everything on the tech tree up to X point, and everybody who joined the game after him has like half of the tech he does, or a quarter of the tech he does. But there's nothing that you can offer to him. Whereas this way, a really veteran player could actually be lacking a specific technology that a brand new player just got.
So there's no way to have all of the technology all of at once. It's always randomly generated, or do you eventually unlock everything?
Well, theoretically, this system you could eventually unlock everything,
But
but theoretically you could. You're never actually going to be able to, because we actually have alarms in place that make really, really annoying loud noises on all the developer servers if anyone researches 90% of the tech. So the moment they reach 90% of the technology has been researched in the game by any one player, we'll add in another 2,000 pieces of research. So no one will ever actually research everything.
That's something that I wanted to make sure to ask you about. With having a big MMO and with you always adding new kinds of things, how do you guys think that you are going to be able to deal with power creep? That's something I hear a lot with MMOs, where stuff that originally was good equipment or stuff that was originally really useful, as more and more things are added into the game, such as a technology that was really useful at one point in time, if somebody gets 90% of everything and you add more technology in, how are you going to make sure that everything stays relevant and that you're able to deal with all the new stuff, not always overshadow the old stuff?
Well, the main thing about that is that all falls down into the CP, your command point cost for each item. So if you find a gun that's really shit, it could actually be incredible because its CP cost could be so low that it allows you to spam ships with that gun really effectively. So the better an item is, the more CP it costs. So in reality, you're not necessarily finding better items. You're finding better items for uses that you have in mind for them, if that made sense. For example, certain things could only work well in certain combinations. Like a weapon that does critical damage to if you hit the rear or the flank of a ship really wouldn't be that valuable because most cannons are not very accurate while moving, and you have to move pretty fast to get around the flank of a ship. But then maybe you find another component which would increase accuracy of units while moving. So that those two mixed together all of a sudden become interesting and a viable option for a player. But it's all just how the player wants to play and how he combines everything into the game.
Right. You wanted me to build a couple more ships here, and I am trying to... I got a mine down. I'm trying to remember how to do that, but I'm clicking on the circles here in my base, and it is not doing that.
You have to select what design you want to build from the drop-down list.
Okay.
And then click build in the bottom right of the interface.
Oh, that's what I was doing wrong. All right, let's just fill this all the way to the brim.
Okay. So, another important thing about ship combat is that all ships have directional armor and fire arcs. So if you select just one of your ships, you'll notice that there's like this greenish triangle that goes out from it. That is the arc of fire of the different weapons you put on that ship. Now, all ships also have directional armor. So the kind of the base tactic of the game is very much to try and get around the enemy, or to get behind them, or to ambush them. Now what ends up happening is that this is your tactic and the enemy's tactic. So the entire time, what we see in a lot of the more competitive matches in the games, like on streams and stuff, is you'll see like an endless, like, ballet almost of everyone trying to flank everyone at the same time. And that leads into a lot of interesting tactics. For example, one of the most successful tactics we've seen by some of our better alpha testers is kind of a hammer and anvil tactic, which is actually one of the oldest military tactics that exist, where you have an anvil unit, which will be like a dreadnought or a couple of dreadnoughts that are really strong, really well armored, but with no real guns on them. And they sit there to take the fire. And then you have a really fast-moving, hard-hitting unit, which is your hammer, that while you have the enemy busy shooting at your anvil, come around the side and hit them on one of the flanks. So it allows for a lot of these dynamic kind of tactics that depends also on your playstyle and how you like to play.
That's really cool here, and you're talking about tactics and strategies and how people are able to actually take real-life tactics and use them within your game, that your game is expansive enough that they can actually take things that have been used, that people have actually used, and apply them to the game to work in the exact same way.
That is really thanks to one of the members of the team, actually. Our military advisor is a retired 2-star U.S. Air Force general, and he is the highest ranking advisor in gaming history, I think. And he worked a lot with us to really make sure that the strategy in this game doesn't work exactly the same as real life, because we don't have real life space battles.
Right.
But that it incorporates the same logic that a general nowadays who was managing a battlefield would have to incorporate. So that was the real element, that you have to think like a true tactician and a true general to be able to accomplish these missions. But it's not only from the warring element, it's on all 4 elements. He was also a professor at the U.S. war colleges teaching up-and-coming generals, and one of the first things that he taught me, like when we first started working on this together, was the concept of dime. And dime are the 4 pillars that are required to support any kind of empire in a volatile time. And those 4 pillars are diplomacy, information, military, and economy. So we've designed all of the gameplay features around those 4 elements. So, for example, if you are a really militaristic player and don't account for the diplomacy element and the information, the economy element, what could end up happening is you will have a military force that you cannot afford to upkeep, and you will be creating more and more and more enemies that you will not be able to fight against. So the only way to really advance in this game is to keep in mind all of the 4 elements that we discussed, like the information, the economy, and the diplomacy, as well as the militaristic elements. Now, we're not saying we force a player to do that, but he must keep it in mind. So, for example, if you're a really big militaristic player and all you want to do is do military stuff and just conquer planets and destroy players, then figure out a way to run your empire that supports the diplomacy, information, and economy elements of a militaristic empire. For example, probably working as a mercenary. So finding big economical players who have lots of funds and go fight their wars for them.
Right.
Or vice versa. If you're a diplomatic player and you don't want to fight wars and you don't want to deal with economy or anything, you might want to try and found a big coalition. And within your coalition, organize people to be the warriors, to be the Forge Worlds, to be the spies and the researchers and all this stuff. So it's not that you have to do it all, but you have to always keep those elements in mind if you want to have a successful empire. You can't just run off and destroy everything and hope for the best.
So that kind of actually makes players really want to work together, since it's a lot easier for you to make an alliance or a coalition of people. Okay, I'm going to focus on military, you focus on espionage, instead of trying to do everything yourself.
Exactly. And that's kind of a core design that we've wanted to incorporate in the game as much as possible, is we do want... There is no classes, there is no requirements in that sense, or divisions, that we force on the users, but, excuse me, there is, we want players can only do so much. And we want to have players focusing on what they enjoy doing and finding other people to fill their holes.
That makes sense. Alright, I've got quite a lot of ships here. Let's see.
Okay, let me just build a couple more. You've actually outnumbered me quite severely.
I do?
Now, typically warfare would not be so polite and British here, where it's, oh, okay,
right.
I see you have brought more troops than I. Please wait one moment while I bring some reinforcements.
Indeed.
Now, once we're all ready, we'll stand in a line and wait to fire until we see the whites of the enemy's eyes.
Yeah, usually it's probably going to be a lot of quick and dirty stuff.
Yeah, but now there's one other element that I want to bring up is that how a war is actually fought. Now, the reason we added in the fortress shields was, first of all, so when you go offline, you always can have a minimum of 2 planets always secure. And I'll get into what happens when you go offline in a moment. But the other element, which is actually almost the more important side of why we added them, is that when you fight a war against someone, you can destroy 90% of their empire, assuming you're incredibly successful against them. You can destroy up to 90% of their empire. But no matter what, there will always be their planet with a fortress shield in the middle of your empire. There's no way to take that from them militaristically. The only way you can put the final nail in their coffin is to come up with a peace treaty or an agreement where they are willing to shut down their fortress shield on their home planet, capture another planet, and build a new fortress shield there. So it almost is like a balancing element where if you fight a really dirty war and are really are not respectful at all to your opponent and really just take a lot of cheap shots at him, when it reaches that last part of the war, he may decide that no, he's not going to surrender to you. You have to get them to surrender to fully capture their empire.
Now, that makes me wonder, since if a player was to go and just completely encircle another player, is there anything the player who is in the middle of somebody else's empire, is there anything that they can do to either escape that area and build a planet elsewhere, or to fight it out, or is their login always going to be stuck in that position?
No, they can very easily do it. But once you get knocked to that point, you have to look again to historical tactics. When an empire is beaten down to that point, you are forced to you are not able to fight a full-on war, and you must be reduced to guerrilla tactics. A good example of this is the wars in southern Africa with the British and their colonies and the Afrikaans, the Boer War. At the beginning, it started out as 2 full colonies, or an empire and its colony fighting against each other with full military forces on the battlefield. Until at one point, the British were able to keep on sending reinforcements to the point where the Afrikaans didn't have any troops left. They didn't have enough troops to field a full army. And that's when, in a situation like this, all trade routes are cut off, your planet is completely blockaded. The only option is then to start fighting a guerrilla war. Now, what I mean by that in this game is that, remember, I can't shoot your ships if they're inside of your fortress shield. And you can FTL your ships out of your fortress shield. So you would revert to a more guerrilla-style tactics where you'll be building smaller, faster fleets and teleporting them from inside of your fortress shield to different points in the enemy's empire, trying to cut off their trade routes, trying to cripple elements of their empire and stuff like that. But you couldn't really capture a planet from them and hold it very well, because you wouldn't have the same production power which he has now. So you can either fight an endless guerrilla war with him and do serious damage, but not necessarily capture a lot of his planet until you've crippled him significantly with cutting off his trade routes and all those things. Or if you want to just start over, you can build a fleet with a colony with some troops transports in it, and just faster than light travel to the other end of the galaxy, find an empty planet and capture it right there on the spot, and build a new fortress shield there.
I'd actually forgotten about the FTL, but that does actually make things a lot easier, because with that, you don't have to go through the blockades. You can just bypass them.
But blockades will still stop a majority of trade that is going to your planets. So blockading is still very effective, but also maintaining a blockade isn't very easy, because now this comes into what happens when you're offline. Now, an offline player what they do is we have an offline AI, which we call Overwatch, which allows players which will allow players to customize how it manages your empire while you're offline. Now, the downside of Overwatch, not the downside, the balancing feature to Overwatch is that you cannot give it any offensive orders. So your fleets cannot attack another player, they cannot blockade another player, they cannot raid trade routes or anything while you're offline. They can only defend your planets, prioritize defense of your planets, and defend your generic space. So you can only blockade another player while you're online. And it should be pretty boring to blockade them as well. So you just be sitting there, and he's going to be on his side of the fortress shield, and you'll be outside of it, and like he's not going to come out. So he'll just FTL away. So blockading is not really that valuable, except for cutting off trade routes. Now, what happens when you're offline? There's a lot of elements we've added in the game to really balance in the offline management of an empire, and also so when you come back, you don't just find everything destroyed. The first element to that is, remember how we discussed that you have population? Actually, before we get into that, you have a pretty decent fleet built. Do you want to get into a bit of combat here?
We can get into some combat. I'll be up for that.
Okay. That'll give you an advantage, because whenever I'm trying to explain features of the game, I play really badly.
That's all right. You got your mind focused on two different things.
So, why don't you just come out of your fortress shield?
All right.
And I'm moving my fleet back a little bit.
Now, there's this this menu down here on the lower right-hand side of the screen. There are these three menus. The one is all of my units, and then there's one next to that, and then there's another one that's travel speed and all of that. What is the one in the middle? Is that your formation of your fleet?
Yes, that will be your formations. At the moment, we are still working on the formations. Just formations actually falls under the category of custom unit AI. You know how in most RTS games, there's the moment where every RTS player just rages like hell, where he tells his units to do something and they don't do it. They do something else and they get themselves killed. Now, it's impossible to make a perfect AI, because a perfect AI depends on how a player likes to play. So what we've done instead of that is that we actually allow players to customize their own AI. So depending on how you like to play, you can be going and unlocking what we call tactics. And now, tactics you combined into strategies for ships. Now, a tactic, what it will be is it's a list of actions. For example, a tactic for who to shoot at will be target the closest ship that does the most damage. If you are below 25% health, retreat behind another ship. And then for like engineering ships, repair any unit that is below 25% health within this radius. Or repair any unit that is a battleship below 25% in this unit, and etc., etc. And you can really design all the AI of how your fleet will work, all outside of battle. So this also helps people who are not really good at micromanaging their fleets in combat. They can actually still plan ahead what they want their fleets to do in combat, and then just trying to be maintaining it while they're going.
That's pretty cool. I really like the idea that you can customize what you want to happen.
So that also falls into the formation, because you can say, like, formations will give different minor bonuses to your units, and you can also say, like, if this is happening, we want these units to break into this formation, these units break into this formation, etc., etc. And you can also manually select them and tell them to go into a formation. Now, let me... okay, so what was it? Oh, offline. When a player goes offline, an important thing is that, remember how we discussed before the, okay, I'm just gonna start attacking you.
Can I, do I just automatically retaliate?
Yes. As soon as I start attacking you, you automatically set me as hostile. Notice how right now a lot of your, all my icons above my units are red.
Yes.
Remember, you probably don't want to move your units to face me unless you design them as broadside units and they have lots of side weapons.
I just kind of gave them whatever, so I don't really know what they're designed with.
So typically, rule of thumb is front armor is always stronger. So you're always going to want to face your front armor at the enemy that's shooting at you the most. Now, another thing is, I just destroyed one of your ships, and did you notice how, like, there was a shockwave that knocked all the ships around it back?
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that.
Yeah. Those shockwaves can really be used to your advantage because they can break up your formation and they also do damage to all the ships they hit. Now, you have all battleships, which are pretty large ships, so the shockwaves don't do too much damage to them. But it's still something to keep in mind, especially when you have a lot of ships in close formation.
I'm noticing that while they're in battle, I can't actually change their movement speed.
No, because you cannot go into travel speed while in combat. This is also the reason we add in combat speed and travel speed is because if ships move too quickly, it becomes a lot harder to micromanage how they work and where they're going and all that stuff. And we wanted to make it more playable for all players, and this way, like, I can't flank you insanely quickly and stuff like that.
Right.
Also, you do have some very large, slow, cumbersome ships, so they're not meant to be incredibly fast.
Now, is there a way that I can repair my ships while I'm in combat?
You need repair bays to do that, which at the moment we're still are still in development. Now, one thing you'll notice that I have these two little ships I'm sending in, like, in the middle of your fleet. Those ships are both almost dead. So my hope is that when you do kill them, the reactors on them overload and they do AoE damage to the middle of your formation. So there we go. So yeah. I just kamikazed my ships into you effectively.
I really like that mechanic, that how you actually have that shockwave sort of mechanic in order to break up enemy lines, and that you can do what you did right there. You can sort of kamikaze a vessel to go into the middle of somebody's blockade and mess everything around to give yourself a bit of an opening.
Yep. Because that's another thing. Units can move through each other. Your own units can move through each other, but we're to be adding in collision detection for enemy units. So your own fleet can move over each other and all that stuff just fine, but you cannot move over enemy units. So if I want to break through your line, I actually have to create an opening. Now, the one thing you'll notice with my dreadnoughts here that you're advancing towards, they are moving incredibly slowly.
Right.
That's because I didn't want to spend much resources on their engines. Sorry. So I tried to save some population and resource costs by not giving them good weapons, which is a bit of a problem now, because if you had a couple of bit faster ships, I have my strong dreadnoughts and then my really fast flanking units. If you had some fast flanking units, you could get around the back of them really easily. And even as right now, like, you can advance a lot faster than I can rotate, because they are just huge hulks of metal.
So, I really like that you have the different ideas of ships, not necessarily which ones you build, but also what you build in them. So, like, you have a dreadnought here, but if you would have built your dreadnoughts differently, they very easily could move a lot better than yours are.
Yep. Yeah, no, I focused on other elements, other uses for them. Now, another thing, because of this, you can do a lot of different tactics. For example, one other pretty decent tactic is kind of more of a classic man of war style of combat, where you will try and create an opening in the enemy fleet, like I did before when I kamikazed my ships into you. And then you have a set of units that have cannons all along their flanks, and you charge through the opening, firing full broadsides on both sides of your ship. So there's a lot of freedom of how you want to play the game and what kind of tactics you want to use. Now, right now, combat seems a bit bland. Not bland, but the thing is, at the moment, as we're still finishing up the customizable AI, your units, they don't do anything unless you really tell them to. So that's why you'll see a lot of your units, like, you have to micromanage a lot extra right now, because as I said, they don't do anything you don't tell them to. Right. As we finish the customizable AI and implement that in, combat will be a lot easier, especially for newer players who are not as used to RTS games, because they can customize ahead of time so their units kind of do all the stuff that they want them to be doing.
Right. Now, will my units attack while they're moving?
Yes. Yes, they will.
Exactly tell. I can't tell whose lasers are coming from what sometimes.
Yeah. Well, the easiest way to tell is that when you shoot at me, I actually have some shields on some of my ships, and so notice that your lasers aren't actually penetrating my shields; they're just doing damage to my shields. So if you zoom in a little bit on the combat, you'll see, like, the lasers hitting my shields and stuff.
Right, I see the explosions happening just around the ship, not actually on the ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, for some reason, sometimes my ships, they'll move to an area and they'll just stay there and they won't actually attack unless I specifically select them and click on an enemy.
Yes, as I said, that's because we still don't have the customizable AI in the game. So right now your ships pretty much only do stuff you tell them to.
All right.
And they'll only attack if they have an enemy in their weapon fire arcs. But the whole point of the customizable AI is to combat that exact thing where your ships aren't doing anything, and also to allow you to really put a lot of the strategic thinking into the AI customization. For example, face front armor towards the enemy that's doing the most damage to try and reduce damage. But this also adds in a new layer of tactics of trying to combat against what you think the enemy designed their AI to do.
So there's a lot of things that you have to sort of think about for you people you fight. You have to think about how they designed their enemy, who they have running their ships, what equipment they equipped their ships with, just because, like, you have a bunch of dreadnoughts, but each dreadnought could easily have different equipment on them, be staffed by different people. There's a lot to actually think about. Now, how do you plan on tackling the learning curve? As you said, when you actually play the game, when the game fully comes out, you'll kind of pick up things as you go. So you won't always be able to, everything won't be available to you right off the bat. But how do you plan on really helping people learn the combat?
The combat, remember, once we have the customizable AI in, combat will be a lot easier to learn, because how it's going to work pretty much at the beginning, all of your ships will know how to fight very well for you without you really doing anything. And then you can go learning and slowly taking more control from your ships. You know what I mean? But it will be much more, it'll be almost like there's a mini autopilot for your fleet. And you'll learn how to customize that and learn how to control it, and also learn to take more of the micromanagement onto yourself. But we're going to be putting a lot of work into trying to make the learning curve as simple as possible, and that will mostly really come in through the AI, because, as I said, you'll have an AI that can pretty much, that will know how to play the game for you. And you can manage what parts of the game you want to. And you can just step in and modify certain elements of it. And now this is if you're not a... Oh, that was very clever. I see what you did there. I was like, where am I getting shot from? So, yeah, and that will be a main element to help sort out the learning curve a bit, make it a bit easier for the players. And this is also for people who don't know how to play an RTS game, or that aren't really good at RTS games. If you have played an RTS game before, a lot of the stuff comes pretty naturally to you, especially if you played like a Company of Heroes type of RTS game, where directional of your tanks and stuff is quite important. But that is that's pretty much the basics of it. And now also, as saying, when you were bringing up, I wanted to bring stuff, when you were talking about the how many elements there are to keep in mind about what your enemy has, not only what ships they have, but how they design them, what crew they have, all this stuff. That's where a lot of the value of the information players comes in. Players who dedicate themselves and their empire just on gathering this kind of information is really important, because this is the information that could be incredibly valuable to a militaristic player. Because for a militaristic player, I would love to know what kind of ships you had, how you designed them, what crews you had on those ships. So this is information that I would be more than willing to buy from a player who dedicated themselves to getting it for me.
Right, so if you had a player who was dedicated for espionage, you can go and get it from them. Now, you can actually buy stuff from other people. You can actually trade resources for information or other things like that. How does that necessarily work in the game? Is it just you type into the chat box, oh, do you have any idea of this, and then they tell you? Or is there like an actual manifest or clipboard, I guess, of information that you can, through the game, purchase from them that will give you information on a specific player?
Not most of the elements you'll be able to buy through like clipboards, through manifestos, you'll be able to buy the research, the reports that they have on that player in game. And then some elements will be more external. For example, like I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but whatever that there isn't in a clipboard format, like for example, what's the history of that player? What have they been doing recently? This is still valuable information. Like what happened in their last 2 or 3 battles, how do they like to play? This is information that an information player would gather through just observing that player, and you could still hire them to try and get that information for you, and it's still very valuable. But another, actually, that's a good point to bring up, is how does trading and stuff like that work? Now, how all that elements work, there is no global market whereas you build a market on your planet, and you'll see this market facility orbiting your planet. Actually, if you want to do that right now, go ahead and click on your Empire Management tab.
All right, I'll do that now that you've destroyed my entire fleet. Though I think there might still be somebody left because I have a blue marker showing that someone will move. I can't tell if that's just a glitch or not. It might just be a glitch.
There is a glitch with ghost ships right now. Every once in a while, if a ship dies in a specific way, it can become a ghost ship, where it's dead but it's still alive. More of a zombie ship, actually.
Yeah, I've got a blue marker for where one would move, but I don't think I have any ships left.
Oh, okay, so it may just be a ghost ship then. So now, if you go and on your planet, and you build the market in the build sector, build a market.
All right.
Once that's completed, you can put components into the market, sell components with other players. You can trade components with other players. And to move things between your own planets even, you must load them onto ships with cargo bays to move them between your planets.
I don't actually see a market here to build. Is that something I have not unlocked yet?
Oh, no, they might have named it something.
A trace station?
Yeah, trade station, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the trade station. Go ahead and build a trade station. And now once the trade station is completed, you'll actually even notice it orbiting your planet. Now, you can load... this is an important element to how the whole economy of the game works, is that everything exists always. Like, if I want to trade with you something, it's not all of a sudden you get what I was giving you and I get what you were giving me. We actually have to load it into ships and exchange with each other. So everything actually exists, which also means that trade routes you can have pirates who are blockading trade routes or capturing trade ships and getting the resources that are on those trade ships.
So does that mean I actually have to build specific cargo ships, or is that integrated within the trade station that it has its own cargo ships?
No, that you have to build your own ships for it. Now the offline AI will manage elements of your empire. For example, you can hold a couple of automated trade routes. And now this is also something that really is important when it comes to the monetization element of the game. The game will be a one-time purchase, but we will have an optional premium subscription, which is much more of a quality of life subscription. It doesn't actually give you any benefits in the game, but one of the things it gives you is more automated trade routes and stuff. Now, there's a real downside to automated trade routes, which is the AI does not know when a trade route is being blockaded and when your ships are being captured. So if a trade doesn't go through, the AI will just build another trade ship and send another trade ship. So the premium account it doesn't add much power. It doesn't add any power to a player at all. But if a player doesn't want to micromanage certain elements of an empire, it's a quality of life thing. It just makes some things a bit easier and simpler for them to do. But coming from a competitive RTS background, the last thing I'd ever want is for this game to be pay to win.
Right. That's something you get a lot of with MMOs. You get a lot of MMOs that are free to play, and a lot of them, in order to get people to play, they end up being a bit pay to win, which pay to win's never really fun.
No.
I don't know why that still exists, but...
Well, it's just, to make a free-to-play game, there was a point in time here when I was speaking with a lot of publishers about this game, and they all really wanted it to be free-to-play, and it's actually almost impossible to build a free-to-play model that isn't in some form pay to win. I mean, even when you get into games like League of Legends, where it's not pay to win, but there is a hint that a new champion may be better than an older champion, and every once in a while they release one that is overpowered and then they nerf it again to make it more balanced again. But it's still that element. It's like, if I get that champion in that first week, there's a chance that he may be really, really good, and I can get it with credits, with in-game currency, but like, I want him right now, and I don't have all the credits on hand.
Right.
So stuff like that.
The only free-to-play that I could think of that really isn't pay-to-win would be a game like Team Fortress 2. And even though people try to copy Team Fortress 2, the stuff with Team Fortress 2 only seems to work for that game. Other companies have tried to copy the pay-for-cosmetic thing, and it never really works for some reason.
I think the reason Team Fortress 2 is also so comfortably free-to-play is because it does, like, the conversion rate and the amount of money it makes per user isn't nearly as much as a lot of other free-to-play games, because it doesn't have to be. It's already made its money,
Right.
I mean, like, they already made a profit. Now it's like, it's just a game they have. And also, part of the value of Team Fortress 2 for Valve isn't only in the money that it makes them. It's a great FPS that is totally free and balanced. And the only way to play it is to register on Steam. So it's a way to not drag people. It's a way to get more people to use Steam. And now, okay, let me just get one thing clear. I love Team Fortress 2 and I love Steam. I mean, it's not like an evil plan. It's actually a really good plan.
Right.
But I think that the value in Team Fortress 2 isn't solely its monetary elements.
Right.
And that's why it can be such a balanced game, and it doesn't need to go over the deep end with the free-to-play and stuff.
Now, speaking of price, what price do you think that this game will actually be when you put it out?
We'll be putting it out for $40, and the optional premium subscription will be $10 a month.
That seems like a pretty decent price for just how insanely massive this game is. The biggest thing, I'm amazed. I am just astounded by how big this game is. It is insane.
I mean, the thing is, I think part of the reason for that really is just we built this game not from the standpoint of, ooh, this is a type of game that doesn't exist on the market and like it could be a good business decision. We built it because we started out just as strategy gamers who really wanted this type of game and couldn't find it. And then from there, like we started from that. We started the point from just gamers who wanted this type of game. And then the studio grew. We got a whole lot of really professional developers, and as I say, we actually did create an MMO. And there's very few indie studios that can say they actually created a full MMO. Right. And even now, like it's funny. Like I'm used to people saying, "Oh, well, you can't make an MMORTS." I mean, so many groups tried to make MMORTSs and failed in the past, even massive studios. I mean, I was very used to people saying that, oh, you can't do it. I mean, you can't do it unless you're like Blizzard or something. And the funny part is even now they still say that to me, but I'm like, don't listen to me. Just get on the game and play it. It's right there. I mean, we have a working server. You want to know if our servers work? Just go on the game. See for yourself. I mean, sure, it's still early alpha. It's still buddy. We're still optimizing it a lot and fixing a lot of the bugs and crashes and stuff. But I mean, the architecture's there and it works. The proof is in the pudding.
Now, how can people gain access to this alpha?
The alpha will be available on one of our Kickstarter tiers to be able to gain alpha access. Other than that, right now, before Kickstarter launched, we had you were able to sign up for our alpha and be what we call an infiltrator, it's kind of like an alpha tester and a member of the team and with like RPG leveling elements. Where people actually get on, they help develop the game, they give a lot of game feedback, and even after the game is released, we will still be continuing our infiltrator program. And the infiltrators don't just play on the alpha server, they actually have access to the development server. And so they're playing with the devs and giving constant feedback and discussing new features. And even once the game is out, when we're adding in the new races and new expansion packs and stuff, they will be the ones testing all those first and stuff like that. But for the moment, the only way that someone can get into alpha access is through the Kickstarter.
All right. Is there anything that we have not gone over yet? Anything that you specifically want to say or want to check before we wrap things up?
I'm sure there is. There's always something that I leave out, but at the moment, I can't think of what it is.
All right. Well, thank you again, Nick, for talking to me and allowing me to play your game. It is a ton of fun. Those of you watching, if any of this seems interesting to you, please do go down and follow the link to the Kickstarter page. Kickstarter games will not happen unless they get funded. And this game, I would throw some cash at it, personally.
Cool.
So,
thank you.
If anybody's interested in it, please do go throw some money at it. How much money are you looking to raise?
We are looking to raise $75,000. Originally, we had another Kickstarter that was going for $200,000, but we actually got some great news where an investor came in and wanted to give us $125,000, which is great news for also the people who backed our old Kickstarter, because it means that we told them that they would be in and playing the game. Worst case scenario, even if they didn't get the alpha access, that they would be playing the game within 6 months on Steam with our initial release of the game. But due to that investor, we're actually able to start work on a lot of the features earlier than that. So people will probably be able to be in within 3 to 4 months of this round of completed funding. And yeah.
That's got to be pretty exciting to get an investor to come in.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, we've had a couple investors. I mean, we had to keep the lights on for the past 7 years. But
That's
but
right.
it is really exciting.
You guys have been working on this game for a long time.
Yeah, we have. I mean, it was 7 years from that first night when I was like, oh man, we need to make this kind of game. I will admit that I had way too much. I think I was playing StarCraft 1 and I had way too much of an energy drink, and I had reached like that hallucinogenic stage where you haven't slept for like 3 days, you've been landing so long, and then I was like, whoa guys, imagine this but big. And it was like, yeah, and that was how this game started.
Cool. Well, thank you once again, Nick, for allowing me to play the game with you and for interviewing. All of the links to everything for those of you watching will be in the description of the video. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like on the video and to check out the Kickstarter. That will all be in the description. Once again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Nick, for allowing me to talk to you, and I will talk to you guys later.
Cheers, guys.